Hey everybody, this is my big block dart. We're going to be doing a set of full Willwood disc brakes on it today. Be changing up front and rear. Could be swapping out the rear bearings on it to green bearings. So hopefully that's something that'll help. I haven't seen a whole lot of info out there on it, much less Willwood brakes on these cars in general. So we're going to get started on the front and we'll move our way on over to the rear. Alright, so this is pretty much what you're going to get in the kit. You've got your front kind of like hub here that rides on the spindle. It's going to hold a bearing right in here, and then right in here you're going to have your other bearing with your washer, and then your lock nut for your spindle. Then you got your wheel studs, and then another 5 bolts to mount this kind of adapter that goes to the rotor to the hub. And then another 6 bolts to actually mount the rotor into these smaller bolts for the hub. And you've got a couple caliper bolts for mounting them to the steering knuckle, and then a couple more for mounting them to your actual bracket here. And you've got pads, of course. Here's the bearings and seal. So Willwood's instructions aren't real clear, and even you can kind of see, I'll show you when we get over to the car, but this diagram that they have for the bracket on the steering knuckle is way different than what I actually have on the car, and that might be from people changing up stuff on it over the years. Maybe that's got a set of newer spindles on it, because it does already have a old set of Willwood disc brakes on the front of it, and then it's just drums in the back, so the drums will be a little bit more OEM to Willwood conversion. This is just updating it. The old ones I had didn't have the slotted invented rotors that I'd like. They just had a set of solid rotors up front, which makes sense. You know, you don't need a ton of cooling if you're only stopping at 1/4 mile pass at a time. Yeah, so we started putting this guy together, and then once we have all that put together, we'll head over to the car. I'll take the old one off, kind of show you all that. Yeah, this guy, you kind of see it's got a raised piece right here. You want to make sure that this lip is facing down. Get it kind of centered up. Well, before you do that, you don't want to put your wheel studs in. And you do Willwood in their instructions. It seems like you need to put Loctite on pretty much everything. And it's kind of ironic, the older brakes that came off of it have safety wire everywhere on them. So I think maybe now that these newer ones are out, they're kind of just moving away from that. It seems like the bolts for the rear ones, I haven't gone through the instructions on that yet, but those ones looks like they have holes to put safety wire through everything, but nothing on this front set so far. And before you start actually putting any of this stuff together and Loctiting it all up, I just kind of loosely put it together dry and try and get everything to fit. I already did one side of the car and ended up having to take stuff apart on it like 3 different times, because there was either things that I either didn't have right because there wasn't really specific directions in the instructions, or I just wasn't paying attention to something. So I would personally get everything set up nice and loose without any Loctite or anything on it, and then test fit it on the vehicle a couple times and make sure you're happy with it before you start torquing everything down, Loctiting it. As you know, this red shit is not very easy to get stuff to come back apart without a little bit of heat to melt that Loctite. Always do this. Just had it. Ah, there it is. A good idea to put the white cap on the white box. These guys are 1/2 inch 12-point bolts. I'm just going to snug them down with this. gentle like, and then I'll throw it in the vise and torque it up. Like this hub too, and then this piece for sure are aluminum. So you definitely want to get everything hand started before you start ramming bolts in, because it will cross thread quickly, that soft metal. And I've also, as you can see, I've got a rag in my vise too to kind of try and keep from marring that stuff up too much. And torque spec on these guys is 77 foot-pounds. And I like to, anytime I'm torquing all this stuff, go through a paint pen once I've torqued it, just mark it so I know what I've already got in case I get distracted or lose something. I have to go back and try and find it. Especially with something like brakes too, you know, never can be too careful. Safety third. Yeah, so you're gonna want to get this guy on here like this with this kind of dome piece coming up and this edge going down. And this guy, these are what, T40s? T45s. On that guy. This guy, let's see, I want to say the torque spec is 45 foot-pounds. Let's see. Yep, these guys are 45 foot-pounds. Trying to come out on me. These rotors are directional too. Let's see if I can find it. It's on the other side. If you look closely, it's kind of hard to tell because they're black and it's dark in here. There is an arrow on the edge of these somewhere. Ah, right here. Here it is. I don't know how well you guys are going to be able to see that, but yeah, these guys are directional, so you want to make sure when you are going to put them together, you don't do what I did and put the wrong one on the wrong side after you already had it taken apart because it was backwards initially, and then put it back together and have to take it all back apart again. Yeah, these guys, you want to make sure that you have this like the actual chunk of the rotor facing out. I'll kind of show you once I get this mocked up a little bit better. If you put it on the other way, you'll know immediately as soon as you go to put the caliper on, because it's going to be too far in. You won't be able to actually bolt up your caliper to this bracket. So I had to learn that one the hard way too. It's the diagrams and wording and this Willwood direction sheet is not the greatest. Like, I would think they would take a little bit of time to maybe make individualized instruction manuals for, say, the vented and slotted rotors versus just solid rotors and stuff, because you do have to shim them differently and set them up differently on the hubs and stuff to get your calipers and everything to line up right. Yeah, like the directions that I have here, it's just like a solid rotor, and none of the pictures or diagrams are very specific with what direction stuff's supposed to be facing. That's another thing, that arrow, it needs to be facing towards the outside of the vehicle or towards the actual wheel itself. Too much. and I'm just going to do the same thing here. Zip these guys down gently on a star pattern. And we'll put it back in the vise and get it all torqued up. I believe, if my memory serves me correct, these guys are 25 foot-pounds. Yep, 25 foot-pounds on these guys. Those guys are T40. And then the bearings on these, Willwood says to use high temp disc brake wheel bearing grease. So I just picked this up at O'Reilly's, nothing crazy. Which is kind of cruddy for how much these things cost that they don't supply you with grease for them. Not super stoked about that, but I mean, I get it. Gotta save some cost where you can. As a company, keep your prices reasonable. Yeah, you're just gonna pack this bigger one. Just work this grease into all of these roller bearings, pack it in the back here. Pretty much anywhere you can get grease, and force it into a crevice. That's what you're gonna wanna do. I like to kinda rock it on the race like that while I'm working this grease in. Definitely don't rush this step. There's always time for lube. Because I can tell you right now, if you're doing this for the first time and you haven't really messed around with any of these older vehicles that have a spindle system like I have, you're already going to take it apart 4 or 5 times, and you don't want to have to do it to, you know, go and replace bearings and a spindle a 5th time or 6th. Just do it right the first time if you can, or if you know how to. I don't really know what I'm doing per se, but we're winging it. I'm just gonna take that sucker and plop it in right there. Get this as flat as we can. Get a rag here. This stuff stinks, by the way. It's kind of like the gear oil greases so I wouldn't be wearing anything that you really care about. Sorry. Knocking you guys around. We've got this wheel seal, or this rubber seal that's going to go on the back of this hub. I'm going to make sure this gold part is facing up. You kind of see back here, there's a spring in that lip right there. Let that sucker facing down. Just kind of get it set up on there as flat as you can. With seals like this, I like to use a socket or something that's about the same circumference as the seal itself. You get as close to that edge as possible with it. That's where all your structure is in it, so you don't cave it in. And just give it a good couple whacks. Just a little high right there. One more good whack. That'll do. So this, as it sits now, is pretty much ready to get put on the car. We've got this smaller bearing right here that we're still going to need to pack, and this is going to actually have to be on the spindle before we can put it in because it rides on that surface right there. And then we've got this washer we need to stick on that and get the new nut and cotter pin, all that stuff in there. Put this cap back on. So I'll take you guys over to the car and we'll tear down that old side. Alright, so on these Willwoods, I don't know how it'd be on factory drums or even factory discs. Assuming they probably still have a cap you gotta get off here so you can get access to the nut that's on your spindle. You can have a cotter pin right here. I already took it out on mine. And then there's this little, it's like a cover that goes over it. It's almost like a castle nut that goes over the actual nut itself. And that's what helps, or that's what keeps your nut locked in. So you want to make sure you keep that guy. Willwood does not have a new one for you in their kit, so you got to reuse that old one. You've got this nut right here. Pop that guy off. That's another part that Willwood doesn't provide you with, so make sure you save that. And let's see. At least on mine, the bit's back here 9/16, so get this caliper out of the way. I always try to keep track of all the hardware that I take off of stuff, even if I'm putting new stuff on. Sometimes it's handy to have that stuff around. Ow! Got me. And earlier I was talking about shims on these guys. They go in between the bracket for your caliper. And there's just these little guys right here. Keep those too, in case we lose some of the new ones or something. Oh, yep, missed them. that guy hang there. Pop this out. Right here, you can see on this side we've got a little washer, and it's got a groove in it that rides in that spindle, and then the old Willwood bearing. And then once you get that out, this whole guy just slides right off. Here, I'll show you. On this one, you kind of see what I'm talking about. On these older style Willwoods, they had these bolts that had holes in them, and you just would run safety wire through all of those bolts that we put on the brake rotor and then the adapter too, going into the hub. Nothing on the studs on this guy. Yeah, if I'm looking at the rears for this car, I think I'm gonna have to do that too. But these new front ones, for whatever reason, they just don't need it anymore. I'll clean this guy up, get all this stuff off. New fresh stuff to go on. Stop looking at me like that, you pervs. And this kit that the cart came with, it mounts up differently for your actual caliper. This new kit that I have, the caliper mounts up on the front here. There's two holes right here that it bolts into for whatever reason on this style knuckle and stuff. There's 3 spots for these bolts, and they are what is this guy? 7/32 Allen bit. If I can get it in there. It's a little crusty. What's on there? Oh man, I swear the other side was not this hard. Yeah, I'm gonna get my torch. I'm just gonna break this. Sucker nice and hot. Hopefully if there's some Loctite in there or something, it melts it, and I don't have to break my Allen bit off trying to get this thing out of here. Try that. Yep, there she goes. Trying to get this thing off of here without scorching myself. Yep, that's warm. Alright, one down, 2 more to go. been in there for a while. Probably been in there longer than I've been around. Now, when I was pulling apart the motor on this thing, a lot of the bearings inside of it were stamped for, let's say, like mid-90s. So I'm guessing this whole car probably got built, set up for the drag strip somewhere around the 90s, early 2000s. Turn this thing back the other way before I get too far ahead of myself. Oh yeah, that one came out easy. I don't think we even need a heat for that one. Still a little warm. Yeah, as you can see, this bracket, throwing stuff at you now, throwing my dial calipers, damn. This bracket is way different than what we've got going here with the new one. And some that, before you go and put this sucker on too, what Willwood says to do is you got to make sure that this whole surface here is flat. You don't have any rust, burrs, or any weird imperfections in it, because I mean it's holding your bracket that's holding your caliper for your brakes, so you're probably going to get weird inconsistencies with how the car stops and stuff wears on it. If you don't have it cleaned up, just clean this guy up real quick. These are caliper bracket bolts. They're 3/4 if I remember correctly. Yeah, 3/4. So some too is these brackets are not marked left or right. You're gonna put them on and they're either just gonna work or they're not. You kind of see that it's got this like thread insert right here. So you want your bolts that are actually mounting to the caliper to be pulling this way. So when we go to put this one on, it's going to be like that on the car. You kind of see that back piece there is going to be pulling against this metal. Let's see where I put that Loctite. Torque spec for these guys is going to be 77 foot-pounds as well. I'll kind of get you a shot of how it's set up for at least this kit. If you have it the other way, like if you have this piece, if you have the brackets flipped, this piece is going to land right about there. You won't be able to get a bolt through the backside with it. A little bit of nature's Loctite on that bottom one. Rusty threads in there. That's alright though, she's not going to go anywhere. All right. I'll leave that over there too. Alright, I got the new guy over here too, so we'll just slap this sucker on. Oh, wipe this. We'll wipe this down a little bit first. This way we're wire wheeling on it. You gotta make it perfect, but maybe a little effort. throw some of this on this guy as well. I don't want to go too crazy with it because we've got that seal and that bearing. So if we just glop this on, we're just going to push it out on the backside there. And probably make a good mess in the process. Get grease all over our rotor and not stop. But do want to get a good bit on the actual spindle itself where it's narrower. So you get a little extra grease riding around in there. Keep everything nice and lubed up. Boom, like a glove. We'll take our smaller bearing, pack this sucker full of grease. It's the same thing as the bigger one earlier. Work this into all the crevices. Kind of fun. It's like finger painting. Takes me back to kindergarten. And as you roll this thing around too, while you're working all this grease in, you'll kind of hear it start to quiet down. It won't chatter as much. I don't know if you guys can hear it now, that camera, but I definitely can. I can kind of hear little metal on metal squeaks. That's the stuff right there. Why the heck not? I'm trying to just cram a little bit more in here. Yeah, I'm sure there's somebody out there that'll say on something like this, there is such a thing as too much grease. But I'm not that someone. So we're going to err on the side of needing more. And we probably actually do. Douche. And we're going to take our nut that we took off earlier, spin this sucker on. Once we start to bottom out on the washer, we'll start rotating this, kind of get that bearing, or the bearings, to seat where they're supposed to. working it. Get it as tight as I can with my hand. What I like to do, I don't know, it's like if you ever have worked on trailer bearings, you're supposed to snug them up while you're spinning them, get them to like borderline stop. But not wrench on them too hard. That's getting pretty stiff. Yeah. And then I like to back this all the way off again. Get it all the way hand tight. And go just a little more. And it still moves nice. If we have to loosen it a little bit or tighten it a little bit to get our cotter pin in, it's not a big deal. We'll have enough preload on the bearings, but not too much to where we're going to burn them up. Really lose my new cotter pin already? Nope, it fell. There it is. Nope, fell again. There we go now. And this guy is kind of set on there. Depending on where the groove for the cotter pin is and these teeth are, you can kind of rotate it around until you find a spot that cotter pin will work. Or you might have to back the nut off a little bit. Or if it's a little loose, snug it up a little bit. I'm just going to poke that sucker on in. I think this one's a little too small. Yeah, this guy's a little small. Let me go see if I got a different one. This one's a little bit long, but it's thick enough, so I think we'll be fine. That guy ain't going nowhere. And I don't know if you necessarily have to do this. I want to be able to get these back off without fighting them. So I'm taking a little bit of grease and smearing it on this O-ring and the threads right here. Use anti-seize, whatever. There's always time for lube. More likely than not, even if you don't care about the next guy, you probably will be the next guy. go get that new caliper and we can start getting that up, and I'll show you how to shim it. Warning label, we don't need those where we're going. So yeah, these little copper guys right here, these are the shims I was telling you about. So on these Willwoods, with the bottom of this caliper, you've got these little metal pieces. You want to have your rotor pretty much dead nuts center. So obviously you get the best braking performance, and then on top of that you don't have weird rare characteristics with your pads and stuff. So the instructions say to start off with 3 of these guys in between the bracket and the actual caliper. That's what I did on the other side, and it ended up working pretty much perfect. I think I was within like 1/4 of a millimeter on side to side difference. Usually helps if you don't drop them. Once you get one side started, it's a lot easier to get the other side in with the shims. Pretty much everything on this is super light with all the aluminum everything. These calipers feel like a toy. That, and they're not gigantic, they're just little 4 pistons. It's really not too bad trying to get these shims in here. And then snug them down, we'll measure it. Right now it's looking like we might need to add a 4th, but we'll find out. So we got there 13.93 millimeters. And 12.6. Yeah, I think we'll throw another shim in there and see what it does. Get a little bit more space on this side. It does also say in their instructions that when you are doing this, you want to make sure that both sides of the caliper have the same amount of shims. So if you've got 2 on one side, you do 2 on the other, 3, 3, 4, and 4, so on and so forth. So we're at 13.14 on that side. And 12.96 on this side. I think we're gonna call it there. It's about perfect. So what I like to do too is, like, I've got it tight with this right now. When you go to Loctite these suckers, I leave one side tight so it'll hold those shims in there. And then I'll Loctite it, get it snugged down. And then do the other side. That way you're not having to fight with trying to keep all those shims in there while the whole thing's loose. See, it was 45. These guys get torqued down to 40 foot-pounds. And we're good to throw our pads in. Anytime I'm doing a brake job, I always scuff them up like that and use a little bit of this caliper grease on the backside and hardware. One thing that's kind of slick about these Willwoods is they don't really have any of that hardware to get cruddy or anything. There's a couple tabs in here, but right out of the box, at least, doing this whole conversion, there's nothing that you're really having to fight with or trying to figure out how it goes in there. Just lather up the backside here, anything that's gonna get dusty and squeak and make noises. just the edges of the actual metal backing plate here. I don't want to get any of this stuff on the friction material, or the rotor for that matter. And this sucker just slide right in just like that. And then these guys do come with this big cotter pin in the calipers already. You're gonna want to slide that guy, make sure it goes through both of the pads, through the caliper, and then spread it out so it doesn't come apart on you while you're doing like 180, not on a public highway, of course. Boom. That's a Willwood front disc brake conversion, 71 Dart. I guess we're not totally done. I still got to put on the yeah, whatever you're working on at home might not already have this style line. There's a little sticker on the back of these rotors I'll show you here in just a minute, if I can get it off. It has a size on it. I'll try and get that for you guys. One-eighth 27 MPT inlet. Just remember, I mean, these calipers, I believe, are aluminum too, so you don't want to go crazy. You do want the sucker snug. obviously, with me having switched the rotor from where it was over here, I've got this line over here now. I might have to, it's kind of hard to tell, I might have to order a slightly longer line or make one. I mean, it's got slack, but this guy's definitely rubbing on this shock tower. So I might have to try and figure out something that can kind of zip tie up to this control arm up here and come down and not get caught up in the wheel and stuff. But for right now, this will work fine. Yeah, something that's pretty slick with these Willwoods too, on these calipers, is you've got bleeder valves on all of the corners with them. They're on all 4 corners. Yeah, there they are, all buttoned up.